I have quite a lot of history working with, I've been a social worker for 31 years. I've been working in corporate social work, working with organizational health, helping employees navigate their work and life since 1994. I started learning the skills that are embedded into this model, into the classes that I teach in 1995. At the time, a 29-year-old, pregnant with my first child, had a couple of degrees, successfully partnering at the time, and by a lot of standards, pretty successful, but on the inside, kind of a hot mess, to be honest. I had learned a lot about mental health, but I had not learned anything about my own innate mental health and well-being. I knew a lot about thought disordered, but I didn't understand that I had a thought world that I was living at the mercy of, and that I was basically terrorizing myself with my own thinking. And because I did that a lot, I wasn't very successful at navigating emotions. So I spent a great deal of time trying to avoid anything that would bring me an unpleasant emotion. If I was experiencing something that would bring an unpleasant emotion, I would numb it or try to hide it or deflect it. But I also just avoided a lot of experiences that would bring me any unpleasant emotion. So my inability to navigate my emotions was really keeping me contained in my life. So I've always been super grateful that the organization that I worked for back in 1995, that was going through its own difficult time, hospital merger, a series of mergers that weren't going well. And that company brought in some trainers to try to help us get our bearings during all of that. And I've always been really grateful to the organization and grateful to the trainers because it was truly, for me, a life-changing experience. I believe if my siblings were on the call today, first of all, I would be really nervous about that. But second of all, I'm pretty sure that if we asked them back in the day, would you ever see your sister being an emotional resilience coach, an instructor? And I don't think they could have envisioned it. So I went from not having that myself to being able to not only have that, but help other people have that. So while the class content isn't different, I do think that the time that we're doing this in is. So I'll be talking a little bit about that. A few things I want to just talk about before we get started here. The sessions are going to be recorded. There was a very fast and large registration, and we want to try to make sure we get this information out to people as far and wide as we can. So we will be doing that. I also wanted to say that we're going to be building on each week. So if you happen to miss a week, it would be really helpful to try to get the video, watch the video before the class comes up again, just so that you're not left behind in that. And the Google folder that you got in your registration is where we'll put the recordings and any other resources. As we go through, I will be adding to that folder week by week. So I do really want you to see that you're in a course that has six meeting times, and we'll be layering the learning. I want to give you a second here, even if you have an isolation buddy. That's what my daughter says. She says we're isolation buddies. But if there's somebody in your house, even right now, that you feel like could benefit from learning, feel free to invite them into your learning space if you want, if you so desire. And if it's not going to be such a distraction that you can't get what you need, because ultimately this time is for you. So you can invite them in if you want. I think if the people that are sharing the stay-at-home time together had some of the same skills, things would go differently and better in more situations. But also feel free to totally claim it as your own sacred learning space just for you. And some of you might actually be watching this webinar like in a bathroom somewhere to have a minute to yourself, and that's an okay thing too. But just wanted you to know that the spirit is you should feel free to share the learning material with others you might be concerned about, or that you might want to try to help build their capacity too. It's a both and. I want you to share for folks that you're concerned about, and I also want you to keep your learning focus on you. And as you're listening and learning, like try on the exercises for you. Try to resist the temptation of applying it immediately to somebody else in your world. We do that. We instantly learn and want to try to offer and fix it. But what I know to be true about this learning is that you can't pass on what you don't realize and know for yourself. And one of my first trainers, Dick and Bettinger, taught me that. And so we want to like let you just have some time to reflect on this in between the classes over the course of the 6 weeks to try to get this idea in your bones. And then once it's there, you can't help, once you really have it, you can't help but share it because your worldview just shifts and changes a little bit. So, okay, in a big class, by the way, this is the first time I've done a 500-person webinar, and only about the third or fourth time I've done a Zoom class without any other faces in the room but mine. So I'm just trying this on. I'm super, super grateful to MSU Extension and the staff members that are back behind the scenes today helping make sure this goes smoothly. I'm very grateful for you all. And I also should probably take a moment to say that my name is Lisa Laughman, and I am both the emotional wellness consultant for the Health4U program and one of your EAP Employee Assistance Program counselors. And we are under the auspices of the Office of the University Physician, and that's who is sponsoring today's, the Office of the University Physician and MSU Extension. So let's make sure we're all here. I want to kind of look to see if there's empty chairs or if this is your moment to really think about your learning environment. So if you could shut doors if you need to, if you could shut off phones, you don't need to have your phone with you right now. If you could power down any other windows that you have open. What I know to be true about this is, you know, if your mind is processing 17 other things, you're not going to get a lot out of this. It's kind of like your processor is like a moving fan, and the words that I'm offering to you might be like a ping pong ball. If a ping pong ball met a moving fan, not a lot would get through. So I really just want you to relax, just take it in and get curious and wonder about what you're hearing. So if you could do that for your physical space, that would be great. The other thing that we need to do is make sure that our internal learning space is also open and receiving. A lot of times we're processing constantly, and like that moving fan, we could also talk about it like a mud mine jar. And I know some of you have seen this and you're like, laughing that I brought the mud mine jar. This one's kind of interesting. I just made it this morning. It's just sand and rocks and water. Actually, it's glitter and rocks and water. And the water is to represent your state of mind and your consciousness, right? Like you're open, like where the water settles, the sand and the rocks are like all the different thoughts you might be having. I put rocks in here because some of us are having some pretty big thoughts today. And in one moment, we might actually really be like just all churned up. So if you're like this, I hope that's making a really loud noise. If you're like this, you're not going to get a lot out of this. So bringing your full attention to just this right now starts to help that settle down, right? When I'm in mud mind, I can't have things come in, and I can't even hear my own wisdom because there's too much chatter and too much momentum in the thoughts that I'm having. The condition of my thought world is not open to learning. So right now, even just listening to the sound of my voice and letting this moment be what you're giving your full attention to is how we're going to take care of both the physical environment and then the internal learning environment. So you notice it doesn't take long for it to start to settle. One of the things I hope that you get from this experience is the ability to notice when you're in mud mine. And I would ask you, if you were all here, I'd say, what needs to happen for this to stop and clear out, for this to become clear where I can see and offer my wisdom. So most of the time people say you have to stop shaking it. And I say, well, what has to happen before I can stop shaking it even? And the answer to that is I have to know I'm the one shaking it. I have to know that the situation's not shaking it, thank goodness, otherwise I'd have to be in mud mine until the situation changed. But the situation's happening, and the way I'm processing it has got me stress triggered, possibly trauma triggered, and I'm having an experience. If I can notice that that's happening, that's when I start to sort of help myself settle. And some of the reset skills we're going to talk about are really about helping you get better at noticing when you're off center or over processing or overloaded with your processing, or trying to process too many things too fast. And then the ability to like start to shift your attention in a way that allows your state of mind to clear. We want to spend more time with a clear mind. Even though the situation, and please through this entire thing, please never hear me minimize anybody's situation. And still there's a situation, and then there's the state of mind that you're trying to process the situation in. So we're going to try to spend some time helping you spend less time in mud mine and more time relaxed, connected to your health and well-being with some clarity. And so one of the ways we're going to be here now is to have you even practice. I'm going to just start, because you might still be, if I could pull the tape out of your head and read it, I could hear what's going on in there, and I could get a sense of the quality of it. So what I'd like you to do, just like what I just did, is I just took a deep breath. So the first reset skill that I want to teach or remind you, if you've heard before, is just the 3-breath reset. And the candle flame on the slide here is here because first of all, it calms me down, and I'm doing a big thing here. And second of all, in my history, I have used candlelight, campfires or candlelight, to really, as a meditation practice. So when I bring my full beaming attention to a candle flame, and I give myself permission to relax, then I kind of fall into a place that's more open and receiving. My mind quiets down. The sand and the rocks just start to settle like a snow globe would settle. And so I want to bring my full beaming attention to something in the present moment. The candle flame is just one of countless things you can bring your attention to. So the 3-breath reset goes like this. On your first breath in, you're going to notice your breath coming in. You're going to notice yourself holding your breath, and you're going to notice yourself exhaling. Just want to do that for just a couple breaths. Notice the breath in, hold, release. So if you do the first breath like that, then the next breath you want to do is to notice all your energy in your body. Because when we get caught up in our thinking and we're having a reaction to things, we tend to get tense. We can tend to, my wife says she wears her shoulders as earrings sometimes on that. And sometimes I can see that that's happening, and I could even just do that. Like we just have gotten caught up, literally up. And so on that second breath, you just want to notice your breath coming in. And as you're doing that, you want to notice all your energy, whatever it is. And then when you exhale, you just want to assume the position of a more relaxed person, right? Like I just stretched my stance out a little bit. I put my hands in my pocket, and I rocked just a little bit. I just letting all that energy leave me to flow into the floor. When I talk to kids, I talk about becoming a noodle, right? Just letting that go. And then on your third breath, I would like you to notice your breath coming in and hold it. And then when you exhale, I'd like you to bring, using one of your senses, bring your full attention using maybe sound or vision. I'll do sound. Bring your full attention to the things you can hear. And I like using sound that you can hear the sounds that are close to you, and then also sounds that are farther away. You can also hear sounds that are coming in and leaving. Like right when I said that, I heard a truck drive by my house. If I was doing this just to help myself reset, I would listen to that truck until I couldn't hear it anymore. Right? So sound is good because it's varied. If your sense of hearing is not available or not helpful to you, then you could use noticing the weather on you. You could Notice the way the light, I'm looking out my backyard right now and I can see the sun on the trees and it's making some shadows. So what you really want to do is on that third breath, as you exhale, just totally take in the present moment, one aspect of it. Hopefully 3 breaths. First one, just your breath. The second one, your energy and giving yourself permission to drop. And then that third breath, bringing your full beaming attention to the present moment. So I want you to practice that over the week to see if you can notice and drop. And I'll be checking in next week to see if you're able to do that. So like I said before, this is not new content. The next 2 slides are slides that I pulled from a presentation that I give all the time. And you could see how it fits this current moment, like amplified. So the first sentence of Scott Peck's book, A Road Less Traveled, is life is hard. And, the only way life isn't hard is if you're living it so confined that you're not really living it. Because, it's inevitable that we're going to struggle. And to have a full, complete, meaningful life, we're going to take risks, we're going to have failures, we're going to have setbacks, we're going to have losses, disappointments, we're going to have challenges that we didn't ask for. One of the things I know, because I'm a 30-year grief counselor, because 31 years ago, I lost my dad to complications following open heart surgery. And so I've known for a long time that difficult emotions are a part of day-to-day life, and that they're also part of everything that happens in the work world. I think that if you're connected to the MSU community, we know that difficult emotions have been a part of our experience and our culture and the challenges that we've faced, and the leadership changing and transitions that we're involved in. So that, I don't think there's any way to argue that difficult emotions aren't part of our work experience. And that's even before this pandemic captured everybody's attention and experience. It's true that regardless of how good we are at planning and preparing, and I do think we should mindfully plan and prepare. I do think that we need to use our very best science and our very best data to try to mitigate problems that are happening, and also to try to have problems not occur. But even if we are the best planners, and I know some of you are really good planners, hard's still going to show up in our lives. And right now, a whole lot of hard has shown up in our lives. Typically, generally, without a major national emergency happening, we spend a lot of time, we put the emphasis on trying to avoid the hard, trying to deny that the hard is happening. It's called experiential avoidance, and it's actively trying to avoid an emotion. And in order to avoid the emotion, you avoid the thing that might cause the emotion. So if I want to avoid rejection, I might not ask the person out. If I want to avoid failure, I might not turn in the application for the internship. So a lot of experiential avoidance happens anyway. And right now, trying to avoid the hard, trying to deny the hard, really puts us at jeopardy. So the skill training that we've been doing all along is designed to have you focus more on learning how to navigate the hard when it comes, accepting that hard is going to be part of it and learning to navigate it when it comes rather than trying to avoid it. And absolutely, resilience training in advance of a hard thing happening is a good idea. And some of you have training. I know some of you have already been to classes because I've been teaching in this community for a long time. And if that's the case, we want to remind you what you know, because you're probably having, like me, some moments where you forget everything that you know and you can't access it and you're just struggling. And so we want to make sure that you're remembering what you know so that you can re-engage the skills you've already gained. For some of you, this may be the very first time anybody's talked with you about emotional resilience or psychological flexibility. And so you do have the distinction of learning these skills in a hard time. And it's still going to be better than not having them. So I'm happy that you all showed up. I would imagine that some of you showed up in this moment because all of this stuff is going on where you might not have thought you needed it on an average everyday April. So I can tell you that when I was 23 and lost my dad, I did not have these skills. I learned these skills, like I said, started to learn them when I was 29. And when I was 36, I lost my mom. And while that loss was super profound and continues to impact me some today, the fact that I had learned these skills allowed me to move through that in a way where I could really show up in a helpful way, and be very value guided, to like fully grieve my mom, and also be able to deliver her eulogy, and be able to be the executor of her estate, to help her say goodbye to her parents. So I'm saying that in part because I challenge this idea that I'm talking about touchy-feely crap, because I'm really not. I'm talking about very practical, where the rubber meets the road skills that will help you navigate personal challenges, business challenges, relationship challenges, parenting challenges, health challenges, grief, loss, anything that kind of comes your way. The webinar is designed to start you on a learning path or remind you of some things. And so what we're going to be talking about, we're going to do this the first part of next session, really going big picture on how is it that we operate, and what are the things that no one's ever told us that if I knew, I could navigate more efficiently, more effectively, with less psychological and physical wear and tear. I think of that as your emotional guidance system. And you know, it's like we have this amazing GPS, emotional guidance system, like a GPS, but we don't know how to use it, and we often haven't put the coordinates in. So your GPS will not help you if you don't tell it where you want to go. Once you tell it where you want to go, it's very useful because it helps you know when you're off course. It gives you prompts and warnings. If you ignore the warnings, it gives you some more information, and so that hopefully it'll eventually recalculate. And what I love about GPS is that they're kind of compassionate. Like, they don't criticize you for not listening, and they don't say, well, I could help you find your way, but I'm mad at you right now. They just recalculate. Like, wherever you are, if you know where you want to go, it can help you get there. And your emotional guidance system is true with that too. Whoever you want to be and however you want to present, if you're aware of how this works, you'll be able to notice when you're on course, and you'll also be able to notice when you're not. And then when you notice that you're not, you can notice and gently self-correct so that you're just on target, value-guided action more often than you would otherwise be. I'm going to teach you a 6-word framework, a summary. I'm going to introduce that to you today, even so that right away, when I'm sure someone's going to have an upset moment today, I'm sure sharing space and having too many people around, or conversely, being isolated and being by yourself, that you're probably going to have some time today, tomorrow, over the weekend, where you're going to have an upset. And maybe it's on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being high, maybe it's a 10. And so in that moment, I want you to have a framework to look to help you go from that upset back to your health and well-being in your centered, grounded self, so that you can come forward with behavior and action that is helpful and useful to you. So that when you're out of your ever-loving mind and about to go off on a kid, that you might witness that and align before you do that behavior that you might later regret. I love these skills, and it's not that if my kids were all here, they would tell you that I sometimes still lose my ever-loving mind, but I'm more able more often to see it happening and to interrupt it before I do something that I'm going to regret. And sometimes it takes like a look on their face to tell me, like, I'm so into my upset that I don't see it. I remember one time my son, who was taller than me, I was leaning on the stairs and I was looking up at him, and I heard, this is what I said, and I can tell by the look on your face that I'm out of my ever-loving mind. So if I were you, I would get away from me right now because I'm not safe. And he was like, I'm like, no, seriously, go. And it was kind of cool because he went away and I went in the other room and I sat down and I was actually doing a 3-breath reset, coming home to myself. And he stuck his head in the door. He was like, can I get you anything? Right? Like he knew that I was just having a hard time. He also knew not to personalize that because they've learned a little bit about this too. So how we navigate together changes when you have this too. So I'm going to show you the 6-word framework even today. And then over the course of time, every week, I'm going to try to give you these practical skills. Today, we've already talked about the 3-breath reset, and you'll have the 6-word framework. And there'll be one more I'm going to talk about right towards the end that I want you to practice this week. If we talk about these but don't practice them, they won't get in your bones. So I'm really hoping that you'll get curious about what I'm saying as your days unfold. We're also going to spend some time exploring how power and privilege impact people disproportionately based on the intersections of race, gender, class, disability, age, sexual orientation, and all of the other human differences. I think it's really important when you're in the target group and don't have privilege that you understand what's happening for you in the mix too. You sort of see and give credence to the fact that there's additional challenges that you're facing right now, because that will help you help yourself navigate. And it's also important for us to understand that context when we're listening to somebody else's story or listening to what's happening and understanding why our healthcare system, for example, might be in the place that it's in and how that's connected to racism and classism. So while we won't go into that in great depth, you'll see that it's part of the resilience training model that we have to be awake and aware about these. I'll say a little bit more about that in a moment. And I'm also going to ask you to really think about claiming some core values, because again, that sets your compass. So you want your core values to be just your own. So like, what are your core values about the stay-at-home space you're sharing with people? I had a great conversation with somebody. He may be on the call here today about really thinking about, as he's sharing the space with his wife, what does he want his intention to be in terms of the values? And so as we were talking about sweetness, care, concern, lightheartedness, like if our values are, if we're set our compass on that, for me, like one of my values about that is like really being steady for like letting people be able to have the experiences that they want. So I would want you to think about your values connected to like, okay, what are the values for your work while you're working remotely? Those might be different values than the values you think about your home climate. So we're going to talk about why getting clear about your values in different places helps you thrive, and it helps you be who you want to be, which is much better. Like, we can't control a lot of what's happening, but we do have something to say about the way we bring our own energy to it. And that's gonna be a determining factor for whether we just survive this thing or whether we thrive during it. And since we don't know how long all of this is going to be happening, we want to really make sure we're thriving. Because the wear and tear on us, if we shut down and we're not thriving, and the wear and tear on us is going to be longer. Like, there's not just how we're navigating it now, but the physiological impact in terms of chronic health issues that'll happen for us down the road. So that's what we're going to be dealing with. We're just getting started today. It's going to take some time to unfold this over the 6 sessions. I hope you'll make a commitment to really participating in the whole process. Right now, I'd like you just, wherever you're at, either on your phone or on a piece of paper or on a Word doc, whatever, just reflect for a few minutes on the emotions you've been experiencing in the past few weeks. Jot them down and list them as fully as you can, just in your own space. I just got a cue. Just one moment. While you're thinking about that, just take a minute to think about those. So I'm getting reminded by my ever helpful assistant that I also wanted to ask a question, a poll question for you. So go ahead and do this emotion piece first and jot them down. The full range, like whatever you can kind of remember yourself like having as a significant emotion in the past few weeks. And then when you get that list down, I'd also like you to circle the ones that feel really significant. Thank you. Okay, so before we go on, there was a poll question, and those results are going to be shared now because I skipped that part. Is that true?
Yes, you're all good. The results are being shared. We had 3 questions that we asked you. We just wanted to kind of have a sense of the group that's there and give you a sense of you're not alone. So that is the one piece that's there for you to review, and we'll just continue to go on through the other exercise.
So Megan, can you share the results for me about like how many people have had this is how many people have had the emotional resilience training in the past?
Yes, the most popular result was some at about 45%. Have you heard the concept of psychological flexibility? The answer was no at about 53%. And then have you considered the importance of strengthening psychological flexibility? And there's a resounding yes of 61%.
They have had the conversation before. Okay, this is good. Then it won't be completely brand new to folks. So thank you for that. Okay, back to the emotions that we're talking about here. So what I would say is true when I have asked people this questions now pretty much. I've got like 100 episodes of this question being asked, and there's some similarities. So if you're looking at your list right now, I think you'll find that you have more than one emotion, that you probably have a list of emotions. And typically people have more of what I might call heavier hard emotions than the lighter, brighter emotions. So if that's true for you, then you're also like well within the range of normal. And often the ones that people circle are the heavier ones, like the ones that have really felt like they've gotten their attention. Often when I ask people to do this, they're writing on an index card and then they're sharing the card with me, which I've turned into word clouds. And I have like 100 word clouds from MSU different groups and trainings that I've done. Often they look something like this. So I'm going to show you some of these. And the larger words are the ones that got said more by that group of people. And I want you to notice which words jump out big. And I also just want you to take these in for a minute, because when we say that there's no place for emotions in the workplace, that's like a common myth, that we should leave our emotions at the door. These slides are proof that we don't do that. And not only is it proof that we don't do that, I think it's also proof that we all don't do that. Because I'm just going to show you a series of slides, and I'm going to give it like 10 seconds on each slide. I just want you to take them in, and I also want you to just know that these slides represent different groups of people. There is a slide here that represents support staff. There's a slide that represents executive leadership. There's a slide that represents a group of faculty members. There's a slide that represents a group of undergraduate students and a group of graduate students. The question I'm going to ask you at the end, as I show you these, is would you be able to pick out who's who on these? So I'm just going to show them to you for just a minute. This is the range of emotions that people are feeling. You'll notice as you look at these that if you look close, there are emotions that are on the lighter, brighter side of the scale that are in here. Gratefulness, joy, hope. They don't jump out as much because most people have their focus on the hard emotions. And what's interesting is they have focus on they spend more time and they're more stuck on the emotions that they're actively struggling not to have. And so part of it's because we have a lot of stressors and the way we're relating to those stressors create a lot of that emotion. And the other is we're resisting these emotions. And so it's true that the emotions that we don't want to have, we end up having more of. And so one of the things we're going to talk about is how to let those emotions come through. So they come and they inform us. Some of the heavier emotions are super critical to you taking care of yourself. Fear can help you know when something's not okay. Anger can tell you where you need to set a boundary, but because we resist those, we don't get the message, and then we are too impacted by the emotion. So here's a couple more. Just noticing, for me, I notice the similarity between them. And I notice how much emotion people are feeling. So the poll question Megan's going to ask you right now is, would you be able to tell the difference between who's faculty, who's staff, who's students in this?
Go ahead and respond to the poll.
Thanks, Megan. Go ahead and respond to that poll question. Just generally wanting to get a sense of, do you feel like people are different in different roles and different groups, or is the way we navigate, it's hard to tell? Is it hard to tell who's who in this mix?
All right, we're getting notifications that they're not seeing the poll for some reason. So
Okay.
I'm gonna try that again.
We can also let's just do it. I'm curious your opinion if you notice that, but I'll go ahead.
There you go. It's going ahead and working now. So there we go. We just needed to have a little second. So just give it a couple minutes and we're getting a quick response. We'll give everybody about a minute to respond, and then we'll go ahead and close this poll.
While you're waiting for the poll to close, feel free to practice that 3-breath reset again. First breath, just noticing your breath in and out. Second breath, noticing your energy, bundling it up like a bunch of flowers or leaves, and then dropping those to the ground. And then the third, bringing your beaming attention to something in the present moment. I just noticed a note I stuck on the wall that says, "Slow down, sweetie," because my wife would like me to not rush through this. So because I took a 3-breath reset, I got to remember that. It was right here. I didn't see it before.
So we have an overwhelming 81% that indicate that they cannot pick out which word belongs to which group.
Yeah, so this is what's been dawning on me is, if people are people, and the vast majority of people that I meet are not very adept at navigating emotions. And if we're a community together, and if a faculty member and a staff member both aren't navigating emotions, and then they're, people that don't navigate emotions well also use emotions in ways that aren't necessarily helpful. So we're just not as grounded together. And so what would it actually be like to learn more about how to have more emotional resolution and to use our emotions, to metabolize them, to process them? One of the things that's interesting is the most recent word cloud that I did was with a group from a leadership academy, Great Lakes Leadership Academy, which is connected to MSU Extension. This is their word cloud from last week, and something immediately jumps out at me that I think is really important as we think about navigating this particular difficult time, which is the the thankful, grateful ones jump out. There's more appreciation, more relief, people feeling lucky. Overwhelmed, worried, and anxious are there too. And they at some point might be what you're really focused on. But as you pull back and as you allow that to remind you of your gratitude, your love, your desire to have connection, our unity, our common humanity, it has a chance to help balance us. So paying attention every day to the full range of emotions that you're having, and you can often have two emotions right at the same time. You know, as I'm wiping down groceries and bringing them into my home, I may feel guilty that other folks don't have the same access I do. I also might feel really grateful, and those go together, right? So just important to notice that. But here's the thing: if you can't tell the difference, and I can't tell the difference, then maybe what we need to do is teach the same skills to everybody kind of systematically. So I'm just offering my big Spartan dream because I sometimes like to place things in vibrational escrow so that they someday can come true. But I actually see that what if everyone who came to Michigan State as a student or came as a faculty member and then over time, so that it's not just a workshop, but that kind of we all get it in our bones. And then how would that inform? I'm asking this because I want you to wonder about this as we go through the class, because you're going to experience some of the skills that I would suggest. I would say we need an agreed upon set. They don't have to be mine. But what if we were intentionally trying to increase the emotional resilience and the psychological flexibility and the value-guided behavior? Because too often in our system and in others, people say this is who they want to be, but then they get emotionally reactive, insecure, shame-triggered, and they act differently. And if they have different power and they don't have emotional resilience, that impacts a lot more people. So I really feel like in leadership development, I feel like it's as important for all of our leaders to have emotional resilience and psychological flexibility as it would be for us to make sure that incoming freshmen who are really anxious, anxiety has surpassed depression as the #1 mental health concern for undergraduate folks. And our counseling and psychiatric services program is overwhelmed by the volume. And what if there's a set of skills that could help folks navigate the transition to college differently, and even navigate and resolve some traumas that they might be bringing with them differently? How would they take the load off the system? So I really, what I'm excited about in terms of the turnout and the desire for this is you all represent a lot of different places. I'll be able to know that when I look at the data of who really registered. But you all developing these skills and then you all seeing how it would help the situations where you're at. You know, an academic advisor helping a student who's in mud mine, helping them calm down so they can have a different conversation about their academic career would be really helpful. So, and the start of that is really focusing on these two capacities that I'm hoping at the end of this time that you'll start to have a sense of these two, and they are emotional resilience and psychological flexibility. And so what the heck is emotional resilience? So, you know, what I didn't know until someone told me when I was almost 30 years old is that I have innate health and well-being, that it's my birthright, that when we look at a little baby, like my granddaughter comes to mind, and they're just hanging out in their health and well-being, and bright, engaged, open, clear, present, just looks at you with those eyes. And that energy, I still have that. I didn't lose it because I had some experiences and some trauma and some abuse and some loss. I still have the same amount of innate mental health. I'm connected to that. It's my birthright. It shows up in creativity, in wisdom, in common sense, in grace. It shows up for me all the time that I'm connected, like a garden hose is connected to the faucet. I'm connected to the flow of my own health and well-being. And so that's something that I think is innate, that all of us have that. What the skill we need to build is our ability to be aware that we have it, because I just did not know. I thought you all got it, and I didn't get it. Okay, sorry, I shouldn't have opened that chat. So do you know how to connect with it? So when you, because resilience is not something you either have or you don't, it's something you learn. Innate health you have, resilience, your ability to connect with it. And I love this in part of the definition, when you need it and want it, right? Like when I can see this is a really big thing I'm about to try to do, it's really helpful for me to know that I can access it and I can draw upon it. I can invite it, my health and well-being, my creativity, my wisdom, and my common sense. One of the theories that I'm learning more about right now is called internal family systems, or it's also called self-leadership. And when your deepest, wisest self is leading you, you would be coming from a state of mind with an energy that would have these 8 C's involved. Compassion, connection, calm, caring, curiosity, courage, creativity, clarity, right? Like when my state of mind is more like this, what I love about this mud mind jar is there's a lot going on, but I still have this clarity, this space to see and receive more clearly. So when we're connected to our health and well-being, we have access to so much that can help us. But if I'm caught up I'm shopping in a thought store, I'm caught up in that, and I'm looking out and I'm thinking the situation is creating my experience, then I don't know to look in to connect with it. Earlier today I talked about, thinking like if I had a big outlet here, and I was plugged in to my health and well-being, and then something happens, like some news report, or I see the death toll, or I have a thought about my kid in DC, or and it's like I go, whoa, and I unplug, and then I'm not grounded. My prefrontal cortex has gone offline, right? And what I want to be able to see it, I want to know how to plug back in. Mindfulness helps us go from psychologically churned up back to plug back in. So resilience is your ability to know how to do that and to be able to do it when you need to. And we're going to be talking a lot about that. 2 definitions that I love, and this one just, wow, is this a good definition right now? Resilience is the capacity of a system, enterprise, or person to maintain its core purpose. Those are your values. What is your core purpose? How do you want to navigate this stay at home? So to maintain your core purpose and integrity. Integrity just means your alignment with your values. So how do you maintain your core purpose and integrity in the face of dramatically changed circumstances? I love asking this question regarding Michigan State as we came through the Nassar leadership failure and crisis and abuse, all of that. I think part of how we got off track is we lost our ability to maintain core purpose and integrity. And we weren't being clear about our values, and we put other things ahead of them, and we got way out of alignment, and then we weren't very resilient. And so I think this is work that we needed to do anyway, is to be able to individually and then as a group systemically be having conversations about diversity, equity, inclusion, caring, transparency, all of the clarity that we're doing in our steering committee right now. I love that we're going to have a new clarity, a refocus, or reclaiming of that value. And then we're going to really have to hold ourselves accountable. And emotional resilience and psychological flexibility is what's going to help us do that. That's true in our institutional journey. And it's also true with everything else that we've got going on right now. The other definition I want to throw out here today as a start is that resilience is the speed and strength, or strength and speed of our response to adversity. So I love this definition, and I have a caution. The speed of it is helpful just in terms of how quickly do I drop my resistance to the fact that something happened, and then implement my strategies for connecting with what do I want to do about it. So the least time I spend resisting and resenting that it happened, and the more time I'm focused on value-guided action, that's going to work out better for me. But the speed of it, we can't do that if we're going to bypass the emotions of it. It just doesn't work. We know that institutionally when we wanted after the master sentencing hearings to just, get back to business and move forward in this new way without actually honoring the pain the survivors and I think faculty, staff, and everybody involved in the institution were feeling. So in that case, we tried to bypass some of those. And the phrase we heard back was that the leadership was tone deaf. So if you're putting emotional resilience in your ability to actually process your emotion, and you have an ability to do that kind of nimbly or quickly, that's going to work out best for you. Psychological flexibility, on the other hand, is the ability to be in the present moment, open up, and do what matters. Right? So what's the opposite of that? The opposite of that is you're not in the present moment. I had this thought yesterday that if I could just see a raise of hands, because you're all in, you're all in the Big Ten room at Kellogg Center instead of on Zoom, I would say, right now, when you're not in the present moment, where are you? And I think that the vast majority of us are in a fearful future, right? Like we don't even notice that we're not here because we kind of took a piece of news and we jumped on thought train and we're into the fearful future. We might also be regretting, longing for the past. So when we're not in the present moment, we're either in the past or the future. And when we're not open up, we're caught up, busy-minded, maybe reactive. And in those moments, we can't, typically don't do what matters most. We spend a lot of time going sideways. So the opposite of that's called psychological rigidity. And in one of the classes, we're going to lean into this skill, and I'm going to have you do an assessment on your current level of psychological flexibility. And then we're going to see how to, strategically build the skills to help you be more open. One way I talk about psychological flexibility is that's again back to like if you think of yourself like you're the garden hose and you're connected to the faucet which brings you the flow. When a garden hose is operating as designed, it's relaxed and open. It's got good flow, and then you can direct it to watering this garden or washing this car or cleaning off the roof of your sun porch. Because it would make your wife really happy. When you're doing that, relaxed in full flow, you get to have good outcome. If that hose gets kinked, the flow gets interrupted, and you don't have as good a flow, and you can't do the watering. So what we're looking for is the ability to notice when we're kinked up, and to have the skills to relax back open so we get the flow back. And then we really want to water what is most important to water. Most folks don't get, though, that they're kinking, that they have anything to do with the interruption of their flow. Because culturally, through the media, through politics, through advertising, culturally we're led to believe that the circumstances are the thing that's creating our reality only, that it's only the circumstances. She's pushing my buttons, he's on my last nerve, they're driving me crazy. We think that the condition of my psychological stance is determined at me by the circumstances, rather than seeing that I have circumstances, and in some circumstance, and that in those same circumstances, I will be in some moments kinked, and in some moments open and connected, and bring in what is useful and helpful. And so we'll talk more about that metaphor and how that works. The skill set we'll be teaching is designed to help you notice, open, and feel stuff, because there's actually important data there that informs what you want to do next, and then be able to bring that forward. I'm not just talking, out of my own experience. I just want you to know that there's an intersecting set of theories that I've collected over the 25 years I've been learning this. We're going to walk through some of these. Next time we'll be talking about the 3 principles. I'll explain what that is. The psychological flexibility piece really comes out of the acceptance commitment theory model. It's actually called the psychological flexibility model. So we'll do some skill building around ACT. Mindfulness will be a part of the conversation. Mindfulness is just bringing your attention to the present moment with purpose. Mindfulness will be wrapped all in there. We'll touch a little bit on shame resilience theory, which what I teach from that is based on the work of Dr. Brené Brown and her shame resilience model. So I'll allude to that. I can give you references to some more learning for that, but it'll be in here a little bit. Mindful self-compassion is the intersection of mindfulness and shame resilience. And so we'll be talking about self-soothing gestures and ways that you can become a healthier coach to yourself. Like it says, I want to be helpful to you, but I also want to prepare you to be helpful to yourself. So we'll talk about that as well. But if we just stopped here, we would be really doing a disservice to many, many people and possibly doing something dangerous because all of these are just about focused on the person or perhaps interpersonal, but it leaves out the larger context that people are dealing with, which seriously impacts our emotional health, our stress level. And that's like understanding the context that that person is operating in and understanding what's challenging for that person in that context by having that understanding of how their social identities are impacting them in the situation that they're dealing with and how the system is like sometimes I'll be talking with somebody and I know another clinician might say they're depressed. My question is, I think you're suffering from oppression because these are the things that are coming at you and it's hard to navigate that, particularly if you're thinking it's just you and not recognizing the pieces that are about the system. So it is this, this by itself is, a lot of the counseling and emotional wellness coaching that's happening. This here is us incorporating that into the diversity, equity, and inclusion work that we're talking about on our campus. I see that the two sets, helping people become emotionally resilient and psychologically flexible, and having the kind of conversations that make the system work better for more people. That's why that piece is on there. I love that this circle goes off the page because it's back behind everything. So an example of that might be gender coding. Like if you're struggling with emotions and you're having an emotion that gender coding tells you that the gender you're perceived to be shouldn't be having those emotions, but you're having them, you could do all kinds of shame and judgment on yourself without like seeing that that's systematically created so that you don't think you should be able to have that emotion. When we remove that and have a conversation that's just about the human, people are able to experience that emotion. I can't tell you how many times I have to give like special permission for men to feel the loss or the fear or the insecurity that they're feeling. When they're given permission in a safe space, they can feel it and they can process it. Without that, we end up having hurting people. And so that's one example. There's hundreds of how that larger framework is so critical to the overall model. So the psychological flexibility model can be summarized in 2 sentences. I want you to try this on. I think these 2 sentences can be a reset skill. It's like the first one is, it is what it is. By itself, not all that helpful. Well, I mean, you could say like, well, it is what it is. And that's not helpful. I'm more saying it like this. It is what it is. We're not going to be able to gather for Easter like we normally do, right? Second sentence is where the power is. Given that it is what it is, who do I want to be and how do I want to respond? How do I want to move forward? I've been teaching this for a lot of years. Again, maybe missing the mark that there sometimes has to be something that comes before you get to just that value-guided response. So right after the sentencing hearings, the Nassar sentencing hearings, I had an experience where somebody asked me to look at a website called, it's Tell Your Grief in 6 Words, which is a very powerful website. And if you only have 6 words, people, their creativity and their emotional expression is amazing on that website. But I asked myself, like, if I had 6 words to say to people, what would they be? And I already had these 3: relax, reflect, resolve. And like, you know, what I think about relax, reflect, resolve is like when I notice that I'm here, I want to relax. And then when I have clarity, I want to reflect and then resolve. But I didn't have the first part. So I ended up right then, like adding these 3: acknowledge, honor, and release. And what I'd want you to see about these 6 words is that they're kind of a scaffolding. So if you're having, let's say I just rear-ended somebody and I'm like all in an upset about it. If in that side of that experience, I go back to the scaffolding, I have a way to work through it that's really helpful. And so I'm really committed to keeping these 6 words close at hand. An example would be, I came home from the birth of my granddaughter. She was actually in NICU. This is right around the time of the sentencing hearing. I needed to come back to do some things on campus. I got home. I put my laundry downstairs. When I went downstairs, the carpeting was wet. You all had a snowstorm and some melting. I thought, oh, it flooded down here. About an hour later, I realized it was flooding. A couple hours later, the plumber said, you have a stage 3 sewer contamination down here. ServPro came to try to fix that. And so they told me that I needed to get everything out of the basement. And I had a lot of stuff there. And I was overwhelmed. Like, I was tired. I was worried about my granddaughter. I was worried about my partner. I was worried about my daughter-in-law. I was worried about campus. I had just a lot on my mind. And then I'm like, I have to move all this stuff tonight, and I'm by myself. And it actually brought trauma. Like, this is big. I'm in it by myself. I don't know what to do. Just having just the worst moment. A guy said, you know, that I needed to move it. And I was like, how do I even get it out of here without contaminating upstairs? Like, I could not process anything. And then he said, well, ma'am, we'll put some cardboard down. Just stay on the treated cardboard. You should be fine. I was like, oh, okay. And then after he left, I looked, these 6 words came into my mind. I'm going to acknowledge it. I'm going to walk you through it. I'm going to acknowledge it. I'm having a stage, and poof, I'm remembering it. I'm having a stage 3 sewer contamination in my basement, and I have to move everything out of here, and I'm by myself. I'm going to honor that. I cried, and I just let myself feel the weight of it for a minute, and just gave it a minute. Just let myself fully feel it. That was big. All of it was just big. So I just allowed myself to feel it fully. And then I became willing to let go of the energy in the moment. I became willing to release what I was holding so that I could relax back into the part of me that could help me figure out what to do. And as I was settling into my well-being, I felt myself kind of ground. I was using sound in that moment to just like really come to the quiet. A friend of mine told me once, when there's a hurricane on top of the ocean, if you go straight down from there in the bottom, it's totally still, right? And so I think of that sometimes when I'm swirling, is I'm looking for that depth, that still place, right? I know a lot of folks with some faith-based experiences might describe it that way. But I'm going to settle down and connect with that spiritual part, perhaps. And then from there, I'm going to ask myself. So I said to myself, are you going to move this? I knew right away that I was, because it was filled with a lot of stuff that mattered to other people. And then the question of what am I going to do? This voice said to me very calmly, 1 bin at a time. Right. And so I picked up the bin and I went upstairs and put it in my garage. I was glad the garage was empty. And then I kept doing that. And what I would say to you is that it's not like I did it one time that night and it was like, oh, I'm better. Like, as the night wore on, I had to go back over and over and over to the 6 words, right? Because I got like an hour and a half later, I came downstairs and it didn't look like I had even made a dent, right? And so I got overwhelmed all over again. So then I go back to the scaffolding and I work my way back through it. and I do some more. And then I ran out of boxes, but I was mad because the boxes I saved from my last move were floating around the basement. So I was all mad about that for a minute. And then I noticed that. I didn't spend a ton of time there because I noticed it, because I have a good witnesser. I noticed it, worked through it again, went to Myers and got some bins, right? Next morning, ServPro didn't come when they said, I got it done. ServPro didn't come. They didn't come at 10, they didn't come at 11, they didn't come at 12, right? Like there were lots of times throughout the day where I was overwhelmed again. So I want you to try this on this week. I'm going to check in with you next week about whether you were willing in a moment or able in a moment to like think about these 6 words when you were, I'm guessing everyone's going to have some kind of a tough moment between now and next Friday if we don't have hundreds of them. And so I'm going to ask you if it was useful or helpful to have this as a scaffolding. So keep it close, try to memorize these. You're going to have access to the PowerPoint, so you can go through them. Where you want to notice the mindfulness, inserting the calm practice, right? You want to acknowledge it, name it and feel it, and then let yourself have some kind of the 3-breath reset, or going out and noticing the stars if you're someplace where that can happen. Emotional support animals are emotional support animals because in a moment when you're in an upset, you bring your full attention to their little face and their fur, and you just engage with them. And while you're engaging with that, the rest of it settles. I mean, emotional support animals can tell when you're doing that, so they prompt you, which is super helpful, right? Just like a partner could help you notice, right? My kids can help me notice. My son says, we have to clean the house, Mom, but we don't have to clean the house, right? I'm like, oh, I didn't even know I was doing that. Oh, okay. All right, let me bring myself home, right? Okay. So Megan, this is where I was gonna ask for question and answers, and my sign on my wall here says 2:10, and it is exactly 2:10. Do we have any questions and answers out there, folks? Time about 10 minutes to take some questions and some answers.
Please feel free to put those in the chat, and I will look for a few questions and send them to Lisa. To get us started, can you talk about how can I release my anxiety when I don't know how things are going to turn out?
Okay, so if we had to be anxious until we figured things out, we're all going to be anxious for a really long. We don't even know how long we'd have to be anxious for, right? This entire difficult time is filled with uncertainty, and so ultimately we want to come to know. I can tell you this, but you're not going to believe it just because I said so. But that we cannot know something and still be okay. If I could put it on a coffee cup, it would say, I don't get to know. And then on the other side of the coffee cup, it would say, it's okay not to know, right? Because in this moment, I cannot know something, because it's the both and. I cannot know the outcome of something and still breathe and let myself settle. So when you're releasing, you're releasing in the moment. You're not releasing it forever. And so there's like plenty of times where I'm upset about something or concerned about something bigger than me. As an anti-racist white person, I'm concerned about some of the things that I'm hearing. I might be upset, and in the moment, I need to be able to release it in the moment so that I can get a better idea of what I might want to do or how I might want to reach out to, say, Asian American folks that are being targeted in right now. So I don't want to stay upset in an upset until that changes. I want to care about it and let myself drop so that I might do some action about it. That'd be one example. The same is true for anxiety. With anxiety, the thing that's happening right now is as we go through the day, we're picking up different things to be anxious about, and we're collecting them. And so if I had like sticky notes and I had like this anxious thought, this anxious thought, this anxious thought, this, it's like, and physiologically we have to process all of that. So some of what we want to do is block out some of the incoming, because it would be like, drinking way too many shots too fast. Your body can't process it. You're going to have a problem. Similarly, the same is true with anxiety, which is why you have to take breaks and go outside. You have to give yourself permission to relax, even though you don't know yet. And that's going to be something that we're going to build some more skills on.
Perfect. Thank you. Some additional questions that came in, and I'm going to kind of combine two of them. What are some tips to help them settle into their well-being as they look for those depth and calm place and stay there long enough to reset? And how does that also work? You mentioned people with pets or partners, but for those that don't have those, so kind of two parts to that. How do they settle long enough to reset? And then and especially for those without pets or partners.
So a reset doesn't have to take like a 20-minute meditation or a complete yoga class. One of these we're going to talk about next week is kind of like some of the basic principles that are underneath why meditation and yoga work for people. And sometimes when you understand the bigger picture, it helps you get there a little bit more quickly. So, when I was parenting and single parenting kids, there would be times where I just really would go in the bathroom just to have a minute. And it might even only be the amount of time that I was going to wash my hands, which right now, those 20 seconds that you're washing your hands can be, well, I can't believe that happened, and then this happened, and then what's, like literally like, think like, oh dear, right? Or that same 20 seconds can be taking breath and bringing your full attention to the sensory experience, the heat on your knuckles, right? It's it's knowing you deserve to reset. It's valuing the reset. It's giving yourself permission to reset. It's also not judging yourself because you're going to have to reset many, 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 many times, right? So the second part of the question is, how can I reset if I don't have someone that I can, connect with and have an eye-to-eye connection with? We need to create connection. So there's two different things. One is your ability to psychologically reset in a moment. And the other thing we're talking about is connection in a time of physical distance, right? And so without being relationally connected during physical distancing, we can start to not thrive. The lonesomeness can get really big. So we need to be thinking creatively about how to have connection while physically distancing. And that needs to be something that we care a lot about. The ability to, in a moment, witness what you're creating in your thought world and allow yourself to take a break from it, that's completely independent of any other person. I could be totally by myself on a sunny afternoon on my pontoon boat and be completely consumed with thoughts and not at all in my health and well-being. And I can also be, from my experience, I can tell you that I can be in the middle of helping my mom leave the planet and be very centered, right? So we want to understand, which is where we're going to start next week, the inside out nature of our personal experience. Because when you see that, you'll start to see how you can notice and drop. That's what's occurring to me on that question, right now. We'll come back to that too, I'm sure.
Yes, so that is several of the questions here are related to how do you notice, the question about how do you become that good witnesser, how do you notice, how do you get to that point of knowing that you need to acknowledge that you're in that muddiness, and a little bit about what does honoring look like. So maybe if you could go back through some of those and talk a little bit more about each one of the steps. There's a question about why releasing before resolving. So I think that it's important to talk about that as well. If you would do each one of those steps again, there's some requests for that. And I think that might be helpful to just give a little more clarity to each, if you could.
Okay. It's like, that was a lot. All right. So the one that stuck out to me is, why would I release before I resolve? So let me just take care of that. And you might have to come back and tell me some of these again, Megan.
Okay.
So if I'm in, okay, I'm going to share this example. Please know I'm claiming it as my own political experience. I'm not suggesting anybody should have any other kind of political experience. But after the 2016 election, I was having trouble acknowledging some things. And when I was acknowledging, I was just in an upset for a variety of reasons. And in that upset, it's like I almost wasn't willing to release it, because I felt like if I wasn't upset, then I wasn't going to take action. And it wasn't until I woke up to the fact that I was stuck there that I realized that I had to release that in the moment. First of all, I had to acknowledge it. This election did not turn out like I wanted it to. And for that reason, there's going to be things that happen that are harmful to people from my perspective. And that I need to just honor the pain of that, and honor the fact that I couldn't do anything about that, and just feel the enormity of it. And then I needed to help myself, give myself permission to sort of jettison it in the moment. I wasn't giving up my care for, equity. I wasn't giving up my care for the issue. I was giving up the physiological experience of it, because resolving from there was maybe not going to be value guided. If you're looking and noticing that, and you know that you have that intensity, and you're super solidly clear that you're going to be value guided, rock on. But what I noticed is I wasn't actually taking any action. I was spinning in it, right? So when I acknowledged it directly and honored it and became willing to release it, that's when I could ask myself, okay, relax back into, okay, all right, you're breathing. It's fine. It's cool. You're good. You got your flow. And then I could ask myself, okay, so what kind of a white person do you want to be in America in 2017, right? And how, after the Nassar thing, when I released it, I didn't stop caring about survivors or faculty and staff who had been being harmed on campus. I released the stuckness to drop into a more helpful, vibrant place about it. And then I have been very willing to speak out, work towards change, bring my best self. So it's about shifting out of resisting and resenting, dropping the resisting. So sometimes the acknowledging and honoring is you helping you drop your resistance and your resentment, and just get to a place of more of acceptance that it happened. Not that you like that it happened, but it happened. It is what it is. It is what it is. We had school canceled. It is what it is. Members of our community are catching a virus. Some of them are dying. And I have all kinds of feelings and emotions. We have record rates of unemployment, and a lot of people don't know what's going to happen with that. There's a whole lot of emotions I want to feel about that. Honoring, the question about honoring, I think that I ask myself the question, how do I want to honor this? Because I come up with different things. Sometimes I'm so mad, what I need to do is go honor it by taking my medicine ball and going and doing ball slams and swearing and picturing people's faces, right? Certainly better to release it that way than to actually say things from that place to people in that ungrounded way, right? So that might be, I might honor it by calling a friend, or I might honor it by speaking the depth of my feeling about it with my wife. I might honor it by putting something on Facebook. I might honor it. There's so many ways. You want your creativity to help you. The question is, if I were gonna allow this feeling instead of trying to push it away, what could I do to honor the experience that I'm having? So sometimes if I'm missing somebody, I'll light a candle and just sort of kind of have a cup of tea with them. And I'll just invite them in the room and spend some time with them, right? That would be a way to honor. I don't know, Megan, if I got all the pieces of that.
Yep, I'll go through. We'll do one more question. There's lots more here, and we'll work through those offline afterwards. I want to make sure we get through the rest of the presentation. But the last one I think is real critical, as we're asking them to use this over the weekend or next week. How do they even get to the step of acknowledge? Like, what is that trigger? What helps them recognize that trigger? What things can they notice to let them know that they need to use this reset? And I think
that actually, I swear I might have paid you to ask that question that way. It is waking up the witness, which I do want to talk about a little bit before you go today, because it is what I want you to do. Like when I was doing the mud mind jar, like I want you to ask yourself, when your state of mind is clear and you're in a moment where you're connected to your health and well-being, you just write this question down, because I did not write it out there. Like, when I'm centered and at my best, how do I feel emotionally? How do I feel physically? What's my language like? I'm laughing at myself. What's my language like? How might other people experience me? Right? And then when I'm in a moment like this, how do I feel? What's the quality of my thinking then? Like, I need to just start to notice, even starting to notice where you're at. So it's in a moment when you're having one of these that you might want to say, wow, what's going on with me? Instead of like having your focus be out, you want to sort of start to come in and go, what's happening for me? Right? And so the way I want you to do that at first is to just begin to do what I call the emotional wellness check-in. You're just checking in with yourself. You're just starting. So here's the thing. There's how do I say this? Eckhart Tolle, who is a writer that speaks about being present and in the moment, his big insight that changed his life was he was suicidal and very upset, spending a lot of time in this self-loathing kind of thinking. And one day he said this sentence in his head. He said, God, I just can't stand myself. And when he said it, like he heard it, like it was out here, he could see his sentence. And it was like, oh, I can't stand myself. I am having trouble with me. And it started to help him see that there was two of him, the I that was having an experience, right? So we want to start having your shift go from being in your experience, which is probably fear-based right now, to like being able to witness that you're having an experience, right? And that's how that witnessing starts. So when I start to witness, like, here's a question you can jot down. Am I resisting or resenting something right now? I mean, over the weekend, I would bet my next paycheck, which I need, right? Over the weekend, can you catch yourself resisting or resenting something? Write that down for me, will you, Megan? Because I want to like make sure we check back in about that. And then when you notice yourself resist, like, what does it feel like when you're resisting or resenting something? Can you like check it out? You got to get to know, like, you have the dashboard indicator that tells you that you need to use the scaffolding. We're just not paying attention. We hold it like this all day, and then we take Tylenol to get rid of the headache. Like, we've been medicating our indicator lights that would tell us that we're not okay in the moment, right? So are you resisting and resenting something? And if so, might you look to the 6 words to try to help yourself start to have a structure? Another witnessing practice is this emotional wellness check-in. So I would just want you to start to notice what's happening for you in these 4 areas. And I'll just go through them really briefly so it's on the recording and you can check back if you need to remember. What's happening with your physical state? Are you tired? Is your blood sugar low? Are you hot or cold? Earlier in this what do we call it, class, broadcast, whatever, I felt myself get super hot. I became aware that I was hot, right? Like, are you having a medication reaction? Do you need a nap? Is your body sore because you've been sitting in an uncomfortable chair too long? Does it need something? If you were going to tend to your physical health in a way that would help you, what would that be? Physical state, right? Your mood. You're on like a mood elevator, goes up and down. When you're in a low mood, your thinking is narrow. It tends to be more problem focused. It tends to be heavier. It tends to be sped up. It tends to be based on a lot of past experiences and also future fears. How you think about something when you're in a low mood is very different than how you might think of that same thing when you're in a high mood. So I can tell you right now, if I asked you like right now, could you describe whether you're in a low mood, neutral mood, or a high mood? I'm in a pretty steady mood right now. I'm pretty grounded. I'm open, clear. I feel pleasant. There are times when I can just tell that I'm snarky. Like if I was going to label my mood elevator, snarky would be lower than pleasant, right? Like where am I? Because when I'm in a higher mood, I tend to be lighter, brighter, more creative, more solution oriented. I have thoughts and then new thoughts. I have a flow. Low moods, no, right? So can I just check in on that? The state of mind we've talked about is mud mind or clear mind. It can also be like, are you scattered? Are you thick? Sometimes I just cannot get my ideas moving. It's like molasses in there, right? And so you're just like, do a check-in on the current state and quality of your thought world. How would you describe it? Popcorn brain, blender brain, foggy, like just check in on that. And then the last one is, do you have a strong rule activated, like a should? Are you shoulding all over yourself right now? Are you attached to this idea that this should be a certain way, right? So just in terms of practicing the witness, those are things you can practice this week. We want to gently wake up the part of you that can witness what's going on has been with you all along. We just haven't been encouraged to like live from that vantage point. So as you go through the day, I want you to just notice what you're making up and creating and what you're bringing, what's the energy. And then we'll keep talking about after you notice, how can you help yourself? In the meantime, practicing just bringing, when you notice that, bringing your attention to something. Don't try to change the thoughts you're having. That's going to make more mud. Just bring, like I totally intend to bring my full beaming, delighted attention. When I get scared this weekend, or when I get angry this weekend, these are all things that are going to happen this weekend. When I get super sad this weekend, when I notice that, and I notice that it's taken me off balance, I'm going to bring my attention to my most sacred other, who I am grateful I get to spend time with today. And I'm going to take in her beauty, and I'm going to let us have a connection, and I'm going to just drop into that. If you don't have the ability to spend time, then be outside and notice what's bigger just right now. We're out of time for today. I will look at the questions with Megan, and we'll continue this conversation. It'll be an unfinished conversation even at the very end, but we'll just keep building on it to try to help you have the skills you need, because what we're all navigating deserves our very finest set of skills to navigate. I hope you have a great time this weekend connecting with people and trying on this learning. And I will see you again next Friday. Take care.